In this video, I'll be giving a brief introduction to all the various subfields of linguistics. First, we'll cover the foundational fields, then we'll go into the other cool niche subfields. Okay, so let's start with phonetics, which is the study of the actual speech sounds that are being produced by speakers. Have you ever spoken into a voice recording app on the phone and seen your voice represented by those lines? Phoneticians use this kind of visualized audio data to better understand spoken speech. Here's an example of a program that phoneticians often use to analyze audio data. It's called Pratt, and it allows linguists to see the precise sounds that speakers are making. With these kinds of programs, we no longer have to rely on human ears to discern the differences between speech sounds. This field stands out amongst other linguistic fields because it uses actual recordings of speech and visual data like waveforms to back up research findings. The rest of the disciplines don't have this kind of luxury, so they require a bit more theorizing. If you ever take a phonetics class, it will mainly focus on teaching you about how sounds are produced by showing you diagrams of the mouth, tongue, throat, etc. You will also be expected to learn the entire International Phonetic Alphabet, which is the alphabet used by linguists to represent every possible sound that humans can make in every language. You will also need to identify a consonant or vowel solely based on the description of how it's produced in the mouth. Phonology. This is not to be confused with phonetics. Phonology focuses on the rules and patterns that determine how these sounds interact with one another to create a sound system. Let me illustrate the difference between phonetics and phonology using an example. Here's the word dancing. A phonetician may look at this word and ask the question, how many milliseconds does it take to fully pronounce the ng sound in English? While a phonologist may ask, what are the English rules that govern why the ng sound can end a syllable but never begin one? This is essentially what phonologists do. They figure out the hidden rules that govern the distribution of sounds within a language. Morphology. Morphology is the study of the form of words. More specifically, it studies morphemes, the smallest unit of meaning in a language. The reason a morpheme is considered the smallest unit of meaning is because if you go any smaller than a morpheme, you only get individual sounds, which do not convey any meaning by themselves. For example, here's the word undeserving. We can break this word up into multiple pieces. Un, which negates the word, deserve, which is the core meaning, and ing, which indicates the verb tense. Therefore, the word undeserving contains 3 morphemes. Other examples of morphemes include suffixes, prefixes, cases, conjugations, and so much more. Syntax. In this field of study, you learn all about the grammatical rules that govern a language. You can think of syntax as the rules for building sentences. Just like you need instructions to build a Lego set correctly, you need syntax to put words in the right order so your sentences make sense. For example, in the sentence, the dog barks, the order of the words follows the rules of English syntax. However, if you mix up these words, barks the dog, it would no longer make sense since it doesn't follow English syntactic rules. The way that linguists analyze syntax is by using syntax trees, which are ways of illustrating the structure of syntax within languages. The fact that we implicitly just know so many rules about how sentences should be constructed is crazy. Syntacticians aim to extract this implicit knowledge of sentence formation and study it. Semantics. Semantics is the study of meaning. It looks at words, phrases, and sentences in an attempt to extract the exact meaning that is being conveyed. Just like you understand that apple refers to the fruit and run refers to the action of moving quickly, semantics attempts to extract the raw meaning of these words. Now you might be saying, well duh, but this study of meaning comes in handy in cases where sentences are ambiguous. Imagine someone in their will writes, the estate shall be distributed equally to Anna, Ben, and Claire or to their descendant. It may seem straightforward at first, but this sentence is ambiguous. The first interpretation is that if Anna, Ben, and Claire are alive, each gets 1/3 of the estate, and in the case that any of them is deceased, their descendants take their share. So if Anna is deceased but Ben and Claire are alive, then Anna's children gets 1/3 while Ben and Claire get the other thirds. The second interpretation of the sentence is that if Anna, Ben, and Claire are alive, they each get 1/3 as usual. But now it is a requirement for Anna, Ben, and Claire to all be deceased in order to give the children the estate. So if Anna is deceased, the entire estate is given to Ben and Claire, and Anna's children get nothing because the condition of all 3 being deceased has not been met. This is where the study of semantics matters a lot, as a lawyer can take advantage of the meaning of words in order to win a case. Pragmatics. Alright, this is the last major field of linguistics, then I'll get into the really cool niche fields. Pragmatics is a study of meaning as well, but rather than solely looking at the exact literal meaning conveyed through words or sentences, like in semantics, pragmatics focuses on how context affects the meaning of what is said in a conversation. So, pragmatics is concerned about things like, who is the speaker? Who are they talking to? Where are they? What time is it? What culture are the speakers from? What are the speakers' intentions? What is the relationship between the speakers? And so much more. For example, take the sentence, nice job. A semanticist will look at the literal meaning of these words, concluding that the meaning is that the job was nice. A pragmatist, however, will look at the context that surrounds that sentence. For example, this might mean nice job if you're actually congratulating someone genuinely, but if you said the same exact sentence to someone who just dropped something on the floor, it would convey the exact opposite of a nice job through the use of sarcasm. This is where context matters. Alright, so now that we're done with all the core linguistic linguistics fields, let's talk about all the fun niche ones. Historical linguistics. Historical linguistics is one of my favorites of the linguistics fields. It's the study of how languages change over time, whether that be the phonology or the syntax or the semantics. We can thank historical linguists for figuring out whether or not languages are related, as well as reconstructing ancient languages. Thanks to them, we now know that English comes from the same language as Hindi, Russian, Greek, and many others. On top of this, historical linguists play an enormous role in uncovering how ancient languages were spoken. Even today, we still have historical linguists attempting to decode the writing systems of ancient languages. For example, this is a quipu, which was used by the Inca civilization to write down important information. It is thought that the quipus were used not only for counting, but for language as well, but this is still being figured out by linguists. Typology. Typology is a study of linguistics that compares multiple languages on the basis of shared features. So, they aim to find what properties of languages are common and uncommon across the world. Through linguistic typology, we have figured out the answer to questions like, what are the most common ways of ordering words in a sentence, based on the subject, verb, and object? Below is a graph that shows the rarity of different word orders. As you can see, the SOV and SVO word order is used in the vast majority of the world's languages. One commonality among the top 3 most common word orders is that the subject comes before the object. By answering these kinds of questions, typologists are able to figure out the innate preferences that our brain has for certain features in languages. Language development. This is the study of how babies and children develop language. One of the most famous experiments in language development, and in fact the most famous experiment in all of linguistics, is the WUG test. During this experiment, they would show a picture of a bird to a child, then ask that child what it was out loud. Then they would show a picture of 2 birds and the child said, birds. Then at some point the researchers showed them a picture of something the children had never seen before. The researchers said, this is a WUG. Then the researchers showed the child 2 of them and asked the child what it was. The child then replied with wugs. They were able to correctly place the plural marker S to the word they had never heard before. This was a revelation in the linguistics field, as it proved that children do not learn languages simply by copying adults. They learn the actual system of rules that govern a language and apply those learned rules to new pieces of information they gather. This is just one example of an experiment within language development, but the field has a lot of other interesting experiments that attempt to give us more insight on how the brain develops its language abilities. Psycholinguistics is the intersection between psychology and linguistics. In this field, linguists attempt to figure out how the brain processes language. For example, in my psycholinguistics class in university, our big project assignment was to create a research proposal of an experiment we wanted to conduct. This group project includes way too much linguistics jargon to fully explain, but just to put it simply, we were attempting to figure out whether speakers of gendered languages had faster or slower processing times when reading words compared to speakers of non-gendered languages. This is just one example of what you can do with psycholinguistics. Neurolinguistics. Similar to psycholinguistics, neurolinguistics focuses on the intersection of the brain and linguistics. However, rather than focusing on the psychology of the mind, neurolinguistics focuses on the actual physical processes that the brain goes through to utilize language. So, you study exactly what regions of the brain activate when doing different language tasks. For example, on this graph, we can see that the activity in the brain spikes when a person hears a grammatically incorrect sentence in their own dialect of English. Second language acquisition is a bit similar to language development, but rather than focusing on how children learn language, it focuses on how adults learn a second language. It attempts to figure out how our native language influences our second language, how being a bilingual person differs from being a person who only speaks one language, and figuring out the best methods for teaching a second language. This field is really interesting if you enjoy the science behind learning multiple languages. Sociolinguistics. As you may guess from the word itself, this field is the intersection between sociology and linguistics. Sociolinguistics really focuses on the effect that society and culture have on language and vice versa. For example, a sociolinguist may attempt to identify how Japan's politeness culture affects how the language is used. You might study the word choices that Japanese speakers use depending on the situation, as well as the grammatical differences in their sentences based on their cultural and societal norms. If you enjoy the cultural aspect of language, this is the field for you. Speech pathology. Alright, so technically speech pathology isn't a subfield of linguistics, but I thought it would be important since there's a lot of intersection with it. Speech pathologists utilize their knowledge of phonetics and phonology to help individuals who suffer from speech, language, and voice disorders. Some examples of what a speech pathologist can do is helping children who are late in their language development, helping patients who have lost the ability to speak due to a stroke or other accident, aiding the elderly with their ability to swallow, and assisting individuals who have stutters, lisp, or other similar issues. To put it simply, it's like applying your linguistics knowledge to the medical field. Computational linguistics. Alright, we finally have reached the last subfield that I wanted to talk about in this video. If you want to make serious bank, then you might want to consider this path. People in this field work to make computers understand and speak human language. Many huge technology companies place great value in hiring computational linguistics for their virtual AI teams. As you may expect, this field is getting bigger and bigger as artificial intelligence makes its way into the mainstream. Alright, so that has been all the major subfields of linguistics. Tell me in the comments which one you think is the most interesting. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!